So Dan, bookkeeper versus accountant. You know, when we're talking to prospects, we're talking to our customers, sometimes they ask us the question, like, what's the difference between a bookkeeper and an accountant?
Yeah, that's a good question because fundamentally it all starts in the same place. I would say that accountants, controllers they're keeping an eye towards accrual accounting. They're focused on accounting policies and procedures, where maybe the bookkeeper is focused on getting the data into the general ledger, right? So the accountant goes in initially and sets up the chart of accounts. You can't get up to bat without a good solid chart of accounts.
Yep.
And remember, you don't need to future-proof. It just has to be good enough for the business you have today.
It has to recognize what business you're in and how you want to look at your books.
Right, and don't forget about industry benchmarking, right? So a good chart of accounts, you'll be able to analyze other participants in your industry. So it starts with a chart of accounts, and that's usually done by the accountants. Now you got to get the data into the general ledger. That's usually done by the bookkeepers. Now let's not forget the importance of like working capital. You do have things like invoicing, accounts receivable, right? You got to match the customer cash deposits to that actual invoice. And on the flip side, you have accounts payable. So you get the vendor bills. What do you do with those bills?
Yeah, you got to get them into the general ledger. You got to make sure that they have good GAAP books. Like you need to have your payables in your general ledger, on your books.
Not just pay bills
not just a stack on your desk, right? Yeah.
For those of us that still have desks. And so that is a job of the bookkeeper. I almost consider the job of the bookkeeper managing the working capital, the ins and outs, and then making sure that the data, whether it's from working capital or other parts, it could be loans, it could be payroll, making sure that data gets properly, with good timing, right, gets that data into the general ledger. Now the accountant or controller jumps in.
And they can do something with that information at that point in time, right? Controller is that person that's taking the information and taking it to the next step.
I kind of see the controller or the accountant from twofold. One, they're ensuring that the books are correct. So they're doing some sort of financial review, making sure the data, the integrity of the data is spot on. And then secondly, let's not forget about your balance sheet, right? That balance sheet is like the cumulative story of your company, and there's usually and should be supporting documents, work papers, however you want to describe it, supporting all of the different chart of accounts in the balance sheet. So when we talk about especially selling accounting and bookkeeping services, the two are inseparable. We never feel comfortable actually providing just bookkeeping services without a controller review.
I think in the early days of this, Dan, that was part of our challenge, right? Because we looked at bookkeeping as the definition of like that, they're inseparable. You can't do one without the other. But too often, they are separated. The stuff is coded, and you create these maybe liabilities on the balance sheet, but you don't have the actual underlying transactions, the underlying documents to show what that loan or what that note is for.
I agree. So think about the bookkeeper versus the accountant. It's like the general contractor versus the architect. That was great. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Leave us some feedback. Also, check out our website, growthlabfinancial.com. Again, subscribe so you can be notified for the next one.